Today I'm reviewing the Sony A7 IV. So if you're wondering what cameras I've used in the past, I actually started off with very humble beginnings. In the beginning, when I first was learning photography and videography, I taught myself on an iPhone camera. I think it was an iPhone 8. And then sooner or later, I bought a brand new camera, and it was the Sony A6000. Then I moved my way up slowly from the 6000 to the A6500, A6600, and then I moved on to the big boys. I got the A7S III and then the A1. Now, I'm finally happy with my A7 IV, and I'll tell you why. So one of the biggest questions I get when it comes to the A7 IV is what are its capabilities in the field and what do I personally use to shoot with it? Well, due to the hybrid nature of the actual camera, I use it to shoot a wide variety of photography and videography, and that includes real estate, cars, I shoot product photography and videography with it, events, lifestyle, really anything and everything you can think of, I usually shoot with it. And that in itself says a lot about the camera, because not only is it a great camera for hobbyists who are into photography and videography, but it's a great, if not the best, hybrid camera for professionals to work with. So from the cameras that I've used, the two cameras that I would compare the A7 IV to is the A1 and the A7S III. So after using the A7 IV for about a year now, and comparing it to the A7S III, I personally think the A7 IV does a lot better when it comes to photography and just image quality in general. I think it does shoot out a lot more sharper photos, and it just does an overall better job with photos. However, there is a downside to the hybrid nature of this camera. And that's because with that hybrid nature, the video quality is going to be lower than the A1. The A1 is a beast on its own when it comes to video. So trying to bring that same quality down to a hybrid camera, you're not going to get that same video quality. But that being said, I would still go with the A7 IV if I was looking for something that does great in photos and videos, and that's for one reason and one reason only, and it is the flip screen. The flip screen on the A7 IV manages to really push the boundaries of what I can shoot in the field. I can look at the screen from multiple angles. I don't have to worry about shooting myself, especially right here, which I'm shooting from the A7 IV right now with the screen flipped. So I don't have to worry about not being able to see myself if I'm framed correctly or whatever the case may be. And especially in fast-paced scenarios or in scenarios where I'm shooting at weird angles and I have to get into the nooks and crannies of a particular space and I can't see the screen on an A1, I can see the screen on an A7 IV because I'm able to twist and turn the screen to my liking. Next, I want to talk about the mode dial. The new mode dial on the A7 IV allows me to seamlessly transition from the video to the photo mode with a flick of my finger, and vice versa. The reason for this is because instead of it all being on one dial, it has a different mechanism that allows me to just go from video to photo to S&Q. I don't have to use the entire dial to change the entire setting. And this means that I also don't have to continue and change all the settings based on what mode I'm in. So compared to the A1 and the A7S III, where I not only have to switch the entire dial to whatever mode I want to go to, but then I also have to physically go into the camera and redo everything. I have to reset all the settings to match up to what they were on the video or the photo. And that is a huge inconvenience when you're shooting in a fast-paced environment or you're shooting something that you continuously need to go back and forth from. So I don't want to have to shoot something and then go to video and have to redo all the settings and then go back to photo and then redo all the settings again. I don't want to have to do that, especially because time is valuable. And this camera, the A7 IV, does help a lot when it comes to time. It makes it easy, it makes it fast, and I don't ever have an issue when it comes to transferring over settings. And the way you can do that is by going into the menu and choosing which settings, which specific settings you want to transfer over when you're going from video to photo and vice versa. And that means, and this is really important, that if you're shooting video in S-Log, you don't have to transfer S-Log over to photo, and no longer are you taking photos in S-Log anymore accidentally. Now you are taking proper photos, and when you go back to video, you're shooting in S-Log. So you don't have to go in and change the picture profile. You don't have to do any of that, which is a huge added benefit with the A7 IV. Now let's talk about photo quality. This camera has a 32 megapixel sensor, and believe me, it performs way better than I thought it would. Now, I could use the example of a still shot or a subject that wasn't moving, that's in a perfect case, best case scenario, but I wanted to use probably the worst example that I could use to show how sharp the images can be with the A7 IV, and that is a moving car. So recently I was at the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta, and I shot a bunch of cars on the racetrack from far away, and I wanted to really test out the sharpness that I can get from the camera. So what I did was I set the camera up to get some motion blur in the background, but I wanted to get that detail in the car. So I fully understand that this might not be the best photo to show you, but I can argue against that and say it is the best photo that I can show you because of the amount of detail that you see within the photo. So as you can see in this specific photo, I have a car moving with slight motion blur in the background, native from the camera itself. I didn't do any editing or add any motion blur to this specific photo. All what you see is what I got from the camera with some editing from Lightroom. That's what you're seeing here. So now, when I crop into this photo, you can see how much detail still stays. It still retains the detail to make it a quality photo for print and for Instagram or any social media platforms or wherever you're posting. Thus, the images on this are extremely clean and crisp. And this applies to all the different types of niches that I've shot in with this specific camera. And that includes any niches that deal with lots of detail, such as car photography or product photography or landscape photography. You really want to maintain that detail, and that's what you're looking for. And with this camera, you can do that. Now let's move on to the video portion, and I want to talk about how this camera specifically compares to the A1. The number one thing I want to talk about is how to improve and add the best quality to the camera that you can. And when you go from 8-bit 420 to 10-bit 422, it is a very noticeable difference in the quality of the video that you get. But not only that, when you're shooting an S-Log on top of that and then color grade it properly, which is really important, especially if you're a more advanced photographer or videographer, you want to be able to color grade your photos and videos very well. And so once you're shooting in 10-bit 422 and you add S-Log to that and then color grade it to the best capacity, you're going to get an incredible video and incredible video quality from that. So how does the autofocus compare to the A1? Well, the A7 IV's autofocus is actually very, very close to being as great as the A1 is. Now, when I say that, I mean that it's actually harder to be out of focus than it is to be in focus with the A7 IV. Now, another great thing about the A7 IV is that it comes with real-time tracking within its videos. So when you're shooting video and the subject is moving in and out or turning away from the camera, you're able to actually stay focused on that subject whether they're facing the camera or not. And this is really important because with the lower tier cameras, I was never able to do this, especially like the 6500 and the 6600. It wasn't great, and it was really hard to have the cameras focus on the subject, especially when they're moving in different directions. If they're moving up and down, it's really hard. So with a real-time tracking capability, you are able to shoot fitness, cars, or whatever the case may be very easily and very well while staying in focus. And that's huge when you need to shoot a subject that's moving constantly. And the cherry on top is the touchscreen capabilities along with the tracking capabilities. So when I'm shooting something and I tap the screen to focus on a subject, I can easily maneuver between two different subjects by just tapping the screen. And not only that, it actually sticks to that specific subject based on how I'm moving and what my movements are, which allows me to shoot wherever, however, and in any direction that I want to while maintaining a specific focus on the subject. Now, let's talk about the build of the camera. The Sony A7 IV has a very similar build to the A1. However, it does come in a little bit lighter at 1.45 pounds. Now, a complaint that I've gotten from a lot of other people that have used the A7 IV is that the A7 IV has a slight plasticky grip versus the A1 or the A7S III that have a rubbery grip to it. If this is a problem, it might be a disadvantage for you, but this is not too big of a disadvantage for me, and it's definitely not a make it or break it situation for me when it comes to the camera itself. The weight also adds a different benefit to this camera. With it only coming in at 1.45 pounds, you're able to easily put this on a gimbal and add a heavier lens to it. So I use a Ronin RSC2. With the Ronin RSC2 coming in at 6.6 pounds when it comes to the capacity that it can take, this camera is only a small fraction of what it can take. So again, the Ronin RSC2 has a capacity of 6.6 pounds, and this camera is only 1.45 pounds. So I can easily add on a heavier lens such as a Tamron 28 to 200 millimeter, and it still does fine on my gimbal. And this is great because if you are, adding it to a rig or adding it to something else, it's not as heavy as certain other cameras might be. So what don't I like about this camera? Well, if you know about Sony's, you know about the overheating problem, and that still applies to the Sony A7 IV. The overheating problem is very much there, and I wish they would just improve that or find ways to improve the Sony's overheating. With this specific camera, however, I've tested out different ISOs, I've tested out with the screen flipped out and everything, and with about an average between 3000 and 3500 ISO, you can get a good 20 to 30 minutes, depending on where you're shooting, how you're shooting, of continuous shooting before it overheats. However, at a 500 ISO, you can get a great hour of shooting before the camera starts to overheat. And again, it all depends on what setting you're shooting in, how cold it is, how hot it is, but with a neutral setting at 500 ISO, I can usually get a good hour to hour and 15 minutes, and at an ISO of 500, about 30 minutes or 20 minutes. Again, depending on the setting I'm in. So do I recommend upgrading to the Sony A7 IV? Well, it depends. So if you're trying to upgrade to a camera with a lot of capabilities such as image mapping, autofocus, real-time tracking, and so on, there's so many different capabilities that this camera has, then yes, absolutely upgrade. But if you're only looking to upgrade your image quality, if you're going from a camera like a 6500 or a 6600, I would probably upgrade. But if you already have a camera like an A7S III or a Sony A1, then you don't really need to look to upgrade to this camera if your main concern is image quality. Because if you're looking for video, then the A1 is far superior when it comes to video. And even though I think the A7S III doesn't do as well in photo than the A7 IV, I don't think there's a big enough difference to upgrade from the A7S III to the A7 IV. I think that this camera is still very, very great. However, I just don't think that if you're just looking for image quality, then the upgrade might be worth it. However, that being said, I still think that the Sony A7 IV is the best hybrid camera that not only can you get in this specific price point, but also for the image quality, the capabilities, and everything that you get with this camera. I actually think it is a fantastic hybrid camera, and it's what I use and it's what I shoot with daily. So what do you think? Do you think that the Sony A7 IV is a great camera, or do you prefer something else? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more reviews, if you want to see more tech reviews or more photography equipment reviews, I'll be coming out with a lot more content. So make sure to like and subscribe here and now. It definitely helps the channel and it definitely helps me grow, and it's free on top of that. But again, if you would like to see more content, make sure to stay tuned, and I'm going to be coming out with a lot more videos. That's it for now, guys. I hope to see you next time. Have a great day.